dialect. And that basically just said that, I come here in a good way, in a humble way, to be here present. I come from, my brother was up here speaking earlier. I caught the last week's presentation from the southeastern village of Elim. That's where I'm currently enrolled. But my ancestry is at Elim, Comdot, which is what people know as Buckingham Point today, that whole area below the mountain, Yokeo, and some Hawaiian ancestry. So I have connection to many of the villages here in Lake County. Unfortunately, through our history, we have to pick one, but the government tells us to pick one. And a lot of times we get caught up in that type of cycle. But I currently work for Kanokatai Native Wellness, which is a Native nonprofit. I'm the training and outreach specialist. Thank you.
Yate she Christina Lauren she Tachini Shlina Kai Vashishin do Lokta Ishiche and the Kai Shanale. Hi, my name is Christina Lara. I'm the program manager for Terra. And yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Hey, Tanani Sintama, heo heo. My name is Nicole Whipple. I'm sorry, Sintama, Nicole Anna, Round Valley Keana. My name is Nicole Whipple. I'm from Round Valley, and I too have several backgrounds. My maternal side is from Maidu Kankau and Wintun and Nomalaki, and on my father's side I'm Little Lake Pomo and Yuki from Round Valley, so I have a very broad ancestral background, territory background. I am the program coordinator for Terra. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to first thank the Robinson Rancheria tribe for hosting us here and being very accommodating. Danoha. And I want to acknowledge the tribal chairman and any Robinson members here. Thank you for being a leader. Thank you for being a leader and always standing for our people and being involved. Really, just your presence means a lot. And I also want to thank the sponsors, EPA. I want to thank all the organizers, because it does take a lot of organizing to do a symposium like this. People who've brought the drinks, the food, all those things were all done in a good way, good prayers. It's a positive event, so I just want to thank everybody for that. And I think the other part for me is, like, Lake County is very blessed with a lot of natural resources. It's very beautiful. It's the oldest lake in North America, and we have a lot of power here. And so I'm really excited as us provide the symposium providing a platform for scientists. There's a lot of work to be done here, and I've always wanted to bring a lot of our youth into more science so they could be the ones to take over and speak for us and stay strong and keep the ball rolling. So having symposiums like this gives us a place and a platform for those type of things. So I really want to thank the organizers for this. So thank you. And just some housekeeping. I think we're scheduled till 5:30, but I think we're running a little bit late, but we're gonna have fun. And right after our poster session, I think after this panel we're also sponsoring a poster session. And so it'd be good if you guys stuck around for that. That's going to be pretty exciting. Turn your cell phones off to be respectful to the panel and others. If you have something, if you want to have a discussion, please take it in the hallway, just to be respectful. If you have any questions, we have our executive director, Lindsay Daly, that will be collecting note cards. And I'll take a pause, every couple questions and see if the audience has any kind of questions that they have or that has been stimulating them. We're gonna do a PowerPoint, we're gonna do the panel, and at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes left for questions, for Q&A. Also, part of this is I'm gonna teach you guys some Eastern Pomo. You know, I want to test you guys, some of my linguist stuff right now. So I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to say, you know, I'm going to keep it simple. You know, we got 3 words, but they're good words, and they mean a lot to us. And so I'm going to ask at the end, and you know, we got a little something. So. Ha. You have to go the ha. Ha. And it's spelled X-A. It's lake or water, right? So you learn that, you could say that, you know, teach that to others. Ho. Ho. If you do that again, which means fire. Hale, hale, tree. So, ha is water, ho is fire, hale means hale is tree. I'm learning too, so, but these are words I hear constantly, but I want us to share. I want us to share and go back and forth and learn each other. You know, learn more about each other. And so, so just pay attention. You know, so this panel is going to discuss, you know, a little about the work we do with Terra, the Tribal Eco Restoration Alliance, where we're a cross-cultural collaborative. Of different individuals, different backgrounds that really have a common theme of caring for the land. That's why we're here. That's our purpose. And we all have love and respect for the land, which means we have love and respect for each other. And you know, the formation of Terra was really about all the things that we kind of see here in the environment that need help. You know, growing up here, like I said, the water needs help, the lands need help, our streams need help, the mountains need help. All of it all works together, but it's all it's all hurting. And so we all got to do whatever we can as helpers of the land to try to do our best. And part of that is coming together as a community. We don't have a choice. You know, the land is moving. Everything's in motion. And, you know, we want to try to not be so reactive. We want to be proactive and try to understand what's happening as best we can, right? And there's climate change happening, so everything's moving faster than it has before in history, really. And so what is our response? You know, our response is to stand for the land, come together, learn from each other. All of us come with different gifts that we try to share with each other so we could learn and help. And it has always been taught by our elders to stand for the land, to speak for the land. And, you know, as you know, we have a mixture of ages. I'm probably the oldest, but, you know, I have kids, you know, I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I care about our community. So it means I have no choice. It means we have to do, the time is now. It's always been, the time is now. But we really have to make some changes, you know. And again, it goes back to behavior changes, right? The best changes we can make is ourselves. and what we're doing at home, and the things that we're doing, the chemicals we're using, and the tribes, they've never stopped protecting the land. No matter what has happened to us, we've always protected the land. We always tried to speak for it. Even though we're a small population, we try to have our voices loud and try to care for it. And one thing that I kind of want to, set the stage for is something that's really helped me think about how I view land. Is everything starts with the seed, and that seed is your thoughts, right? Your thinking. So that's the very beginning of everything. When you look at that lake, when you look at that mountain, when you look at that land, you have a viewpoint of that, and whatever influences you've had in your life that influences decision making. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you look at that lake as a resource, at that point in time in your mind, when you're thinking of you look at that as a resource, then you're thinking that's there for you to do whatever you want with it. And that sets the path of how you're going to treat it, versus looking at it. And again, we're still in our mind before we're doing any action. It's still in our mind. Looking at it in that, how do we live with it, with a relationship, as a living being that doesn't need us, that's here on its own. And it really needs rest to recover. And so that's the most important thing for me is your mind and your thinking, because your actions will follow that. And then whatever happens after that is kind of what we see today. And then science is really, is good. I'm a scientist, but it's really hard to replicate what's happening in nature, because the scientific method breaks things into bits and pieces for that action. And TEK is a little different in that it's a long observed relationship of those local lands and having those understandings. And with Terra, one of the founding questions was, do you know your land? Do you know your backyard? And so you guys got to ask yourself that question to yourself, And for me, the answer was, I don't know as much as I think I know. I want to learn about the medicines. I want to learn, how to do better, how to take care of my family, and get back into the rhythms of Mother Nature. We're way out of a rhythm, and the natural cycle of the processes of movement. And that goes further in that, even that's represented in our language. Specifically here, our language is verb-based. So that means everything's always moving or in action or in process, versus English, which is noun-based. It's always stopped. And so there's a constant flow, just like water, just like air, just like the environment moves. It's always constantly moving and changing and trying to achieve balance. So we are a result of that, and we cannot break those ties. And so with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and I think we have a PowerPoint that kind of will go over a general overview of what Terra is. So I'm gonna hand it off to Jordan.
Thank you, Tomasio. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, I love that. So yeah, I'm the program manager, Christina Lara, and we're gonna go over a brief overview of what Terra is. Some of you may know, but yeah. So we have, if you have any inquiries about any of our programs, or if you want to talk to any of us afterwards, you can find anybody with the black and orange shirts. We also have brochures and stickers that we brought to in case you wanted some of our website information. But yeah, Terra is a cross-cultural, multi-organizational collaborative that works to revitalize ecology, economy, and culture through indigenous-led land stewardship. And here are some of our partners. I don't know why this one didn't show up, but this is Robinson. Yeah, our important ones. You know? We knew you were right here. All right, we can go to the next slide. Oh, is that?
So part of our mission is also to cultivate landscape stewardship, livelihood, and leadership skills, and weave collaborative relationships between tribal members and the community benefits for the lands of all beings, and that is a lot more than what it seems. You know, the work we do ties us into each other, and that's how it was before. We were always linked to one another, and I feel like we have lost that disconnect. But moving forward, when we weave these relationships and we work and put our hands on the ground together, it creates a healing process for all of us. And so part of our building capacity for Native communities in Lake County, a part of it is training. We host a TREX every year. It's a training exchange where we host a basic 40, which is an entry-level firefighter position, but we add that ecological aspect to it. So as we go through and we learn about the different techniques as a firefighter, we're also showing the different techniques that maybe natives use or the reasons why we burned in areas. And that is a part of us that was taken from us that we are trying to put back, and it also involves our training. We have more than just fire skills that we train. We train about collecting native seeds, about propagating tule, and different things beyond fire, because we are land stewards as a whole. We work on employment, so we would like to have our land stewards be native people as they were the first land stewards of this land, and we would like to honor that by keeping them on this land and being able to caretake it because they were the first. So an overview of some of our projects like Black Forest, where BLM is allowing us to work on their lands in a co-stewardship kind of way. And you know, we're working over in Black Forest to remove some of the heavy dense fuels as they see it, but to us it's our relations. So we're wanting to, you know, make sure that our medicines, our foods there are being able to grow correctly, have the right areas to have direct sunlight in different aspects. The lakeshore restoration is where we work on the water. So one of them that we do is primrose. So we remove an invasive species that tries to overgrow and take over our tule. We have a Middletown and Oak Granary burn. So that was one of our cultural burns we did. It was one of those that really stuck to me. I'm a Middletown Rancheria tribal member. I was able to light that test fire, and it was the first time we had cultural fire in over 100 years. So having those and then bringing those to other tribes who need that good fire on the ground. Clover Creek is a good restoration project where we're trying to create areas for the hitch to be able to grow and go upstream, because we all have stories of having the hitch in our waterways, and we don't have that as much anymore. So we would like to bring that back because it's a staple food source of who we are. Highland Springs is with Scotts Valley and Big Valley, and that one is really good with being able to alert the public and have these tribes work together so that way we can save the cultural resources that we have at hand in that property and be able to co-steward together.
Next.
Well, I think I did want to say all that work is a result of 5+ years of relationship building. We've had to go out there and work with the agencies, tell them who we are, who Terra is, what we're trying to do. We're trying to build off our local talent here. We're trying to invest in Lake County, because we're not going to. Like Robert had said, we're not going anywhere. Our towns and cities aren't going anywhere. So our investment dollars need to stay here. but our knowledge base is so localized, it needs to stay here also. And that's kind of what you see there is there's been trust that has been built and back and forth, where now we're able to start, you know, doing work all over the county. But it's been a long, hard road.
Thank you. And moving on, so I brushed over a little bit of what we do at Black Forest, but some of the goals we have is training implementation, and one of that is, you know, we'll take our guys out and we'll start learning about the different native plants that are there, whether it's the grasses, the trees, the shrubs. We'll identify those and try to move the seeds around so that way we have them in abundance. We also do different trainings such as tree felling, so we'll also take a lot of the conifers in the area and we'll fell them because they are taking a lot of our groundwater and they do pose a fire hazard. And that's another one of the reasons we're out there, is to reduce the possibility of a catastrophic wildfire, because we've all been living through that. But being able to have our land stewards on the ground, fuels reduction is a byproduct of what we do, but it's not the main reason we're there. We enhance biodiversity, so we play a little bit of role of picking and choosing what will be, what will stay. Maybe there's an overabundance of pepperwood, or maybe there is an overabundance of oaks for the first time. And then we'll have to pick and choose which ones to keep, so that way we keep that biodiversity in balance. We support culturally significant plants. You know, we take caution in cutting down our pepperwoods and madrones and our manzanitas. We see that, you know, there's needs for different types of diversity in there, and we're working on making sure that they all have room to grow and they have areas to be. We support the wildlife by not just taking out everything. So a lot of fuels reductions crew, it's a fuel, they take it out. But when you take out those fuels, where are those animals gonna go for cover? Where are those bugs gonna go? So part of our work is making sure that they still have habitat and that they can continue their lives with the reduced amount of foliage and fauna in there. So another one is the lakeshore with the Water Resources Department in Big Valley. And like I said before, it's the removal of primrose, because it is encroaching on our tule, and tule is a staple of who we are as people for all of us around the lake. Replanting those tules will also go for biodiversity. We'll take tules from one area of the lake and move them around, so that way we can propagate in different areas and really enforce genetic diversity for them, so that way they can evolve as well as we are. So as I said earlier, the burn sites at Middletown, each tribe is different in their needs for cultural fire. One of the ones we wanted here was to be able to have an oak grove, so that way we could start collecting our acorns again. We were able to bring out a lot of people to put good fire on the ground. I was able to light that test fire and to actually put fire on the ground with my cousins. I had a lot of family there, and we also had a lot of observers there from the tribe to be able to bring us together, and that's what fire does. It brings us together like a campfire. So we all had these hands together. We had nothing in play but just good intentions for each other. Common benefits: caretaking of food source, cleansing the land, reducing pathogens, hazardous levels of fuels, and strengthening native species. That's all a part of a byproduct of cultural fire. You know, it's the reason that we had such beautiful lands before the Europeans came, and it's because we took care of our land and each other.
Clover Creek Restoration Project is a project we have partnered with Habemetal. This is a really cool one, because not only are we doing hand restoration without like heavy machinery and things like that, we're also educating. We had the Habemetal Education Center come out, and they helped us replant some. We had willow, we had buckeye, we had oaks that we planted with the children. So, you know, now they know how to do those things. They know what kind of species. I don't think a lot of them ever seen a buckeye seed before. They were like, you know, baseball size. But they had a lot of fun, so this was a really great project. There's before, so that's mostly blackberry, and was there anything else in there? Blackberry? Blackberry. And then the after photos on top. Goals for this work that we were contracted for was invasive vegetation removal, replanting native vegetation, and monitoring long-term progress. We also have Highland Springs, which was a very unique grant as well. With our partners Scotts Valley and Big Valley, we worked together to create like a series of ecocultural workshops. And each of those workshops, brought something else, brought a new cultural instructor that we contracted with locally. We tried to work locally with, we have Mary from Coyote Valley. We have Patty, one of our board members, but also from Scotts Valley. And many more cultural practitioners joined us. And the main goal for that was to bring awareness to the Highland Springs recreation area and talk about the significance of traditional stewardship and collaboration. We also developed a field guide for Highland Springs that was included a lot of like cultural sensitive information that we shared with tribes exclusively. We also developed a couple brochures and informationals for the public, including a map that you can see on the recreation site.
Well, I think through the project too, we created some native plant identification through iNaturalist. So if you go to Highland Springs, you could kind of see that too. I think it's under Scotts Valley. So that's fun. You guys go out there and teach yourself, teach your family, the kids.
Yeah, there's a project group on iNaturalist. I think it's called like Flora of Scotts Valley. It's blue and it has the Scotts Valley tribal logo on there too, so you can see that. And one of our workshops with the Highland Springs grant is we had a group of community members and tribal members come out and use iNaturalist and walk around the area and tag some good photos. This is kind of funky. Some opportunities we have for Lake Mendocino and Sonoma tribes are offering training. So if you want to get in contact with me or with any of our crew members, we can work together to do some trainings. We have chainsaw courses, we have firefighter type 2. A lot of the things within our treks that's happening right now, we can collaborate with tribes on. We also do ecocultural stewardship work, restoration work, fuels reduction, leadership skills, plant identification. We offer a really wide range of topics and can bring in necessary people as we see. We also work together on prescribed and cultural fire. If you are if you're a tribe or a landowner and you're interested in burning on your land, we have information on our website. We also have cards for our burn coordinator, and we can get in touch with you regarding that. And we have plenty of funding on the way too. So hold on. Okay. So even if we can't get to you this year, we can work together and schedule something for the following. Do we have time for questions or?
What's the difference between a prescribed burn and a cultural?
Boom. We're going to go over that right now. Awesome. Head of it.
There we are. Perfect segue. How Terra fits in the fire world. So cultural fire, as you're asking, it has different objectives than a prescribed fire. Prescribed fire is more through a Western lens where you see the plants as fuels and you want it reduced down to reduce your chance of catastrophic wildfire. Whereas a cultural fire, like in Middletown, we were looking to burn for the acorns. So when you burn for acorns, you're reducing acorn weevil habitat. That's like one of the main role differences is we are doing something to preserve a part of our way of life, whether it's our food source, basketry material, anything like that. The goal is to have more of these, whereas regular fire, prescribed fire is, they just want it off the land. It's an eyesore, or they pile burn, or something like that. Whereas, I'm not going to make a pile on something just to burn it. I would rather burn a plant to make sure that that plant comes back next year. So cultural fire is intergenerational. So like at Middletown, I was there. I had a couple elders with me there, And most of all, we had our kids there with us. My daughter got to see me pull fire across, our landscape. And I want to introduce that to her so that way she doesn't have that innate fear of fire that maybe some of us carry. It's place-based, so each tribe is different. They're gonna have different cultural needs for that fire. So whether we go to the coast or we're in the mountains or we're on our lake, there's different reasons they need that fire. But the great thing about us at Terra is we're culturally open to hear those and respect those. We try to keep them tribally led too. So as we burn for cultural reasons, if we have tribal people there, we will put them in leadership roles so that way they can be leading these objectives on their lands, on their terms. Terra is widely community-based, so we function not only with tribal communities, but with the community as a whole. So as we go through our Trex programs, they're not just exclusively tribal members. We open to communities as a whole because, we have guests here with us, and if they come and help us take care of this land, then that's more hands to help us. Thank you. We culturally develop objectives with tribes, so whatever they need, we're here to listen, and it's their way for their lands, so that way they have the opportunity to revitalize their own culture. And tribally led with partnering agencies and private landowners, we work with all kinds of agencies to implement these. We have other prescribed fire agencies that work with us, so that way we can achieve our goals where we go. And private landowners, we work with them as well, and we also have open dialogue. So we want to have access for these tribes to be able to use the resources if they're on private lands. And a lot of times these landowners are very open to it, and they would love to have us be able to come out and practice our ways of life again. And the best part about it, we comply with modern permits. So if you need a permit for it, we'll do our darndest to work with you to make sure that this fire can happen. We also go by our NWCG prescribed fire, so we have to have qualifications, we have to wear our NOMEX, we have to do environmental review, we have to do everything on the legality side, but we do that to make sure we can continue our way of life. And a short video. Is it gonna work?
Is it okay for a question?
We're almost to the end, so let's hold it off.
Let me go over this slide, and then I could fill your question. Yeah, this was an awesome video, but this was actually one of our first burns, and this was out behind Century Market on Robinson's fee land there on the shoreline. And as you can see, there was a lot of buildup of tule there, and it was really powerful and historical, and because for Robinson Rancheria, fire, it's the first time they had burned, had a cultural burn within their history since the tribe's inception. And so we were able to bring out elders, intergenerational, some of the younger people. We had our staff. We had, some of our local agencies there for protection. And it was a good fire. Like the after effects was, it didn't burn any of the roots. The conditions were great, so it was very successful. And I think, one of the measures of success was, well, what happens after, right? So that's our measure for success. How is the land responding? How is the plants responding? How are the animal and fish species responding? Are they coming back? Are they having their babies spawning? Which all that was happening, because right after, in 2022, we started getting, I think the next year, we started getting heavy rains. And so this whole area kind of flooded, but it did give an opportunity for, some of the fish species to have a spawning habitat. And so when we talk about those relationships that we're trying to remember, the animals and you know, the plant species, they're all trying to remember too. You know, they remember that it's built into them. They inherently remember these places. And so when we help thin that and help create a habitat, you know, so they could hide, you know, especially from a lot of the predator fish we have in the lake, you know, it was teeming with both non-native and native spawning, you know. But for just to see that from the work that we do, that comes full circle. And that shows like those relationships are starting to happen again. And then since it was a good burn, you know, the tules responded pretty strongly. You know, it was already about almost a foot after, you know, 2 months. And then, you know, it cleared out a lot of that where, you know, sunlight could penetrate again and create new growth. And, you know, in general, you know, this was also important because 1850, in 1850, the Act for the state of California, the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, outlawed cultural burning for the tribes. And so we would be arrested for managing and stewarding our own lands. And, but it wasn't only us, it was also all the animals. If you could think of all the plants and all the trees, everybody who needs fire, healthy fire for their lifeline. You know, the fire adapted, and all that was broken too when we started doing suppression. And so you have, you know, a couple hundred years of suppression, and then teaming up with global climate change, and we have, you know, these crazy fires that are happening around here. And so, you know, but that act also did more than just stop us from fire. It facilitated the removal of our tribal citizens from our traditional lands and separated our children and our languages and our cultures. So it's hard to say, but yeah.
Next, please. Next.
But what this did, though, what that fire did, just real quick, was I view it like your family, or you could think about it like your family, your children. Like you care for them, you're gentle with them, you pay attention, you work with them, right? And so when we did that fire, it said all those same things. It says, now we're here to protect you. Now we're gonna be here and make sure this happens. You know, this is the healing of that land is the healing of us, and it helps us become a strong people, remember who we are, and be human. So it meant a lot.
Yeah, and thank you, Samashio, for the context of that photo. Supposed to be video, but so yeah, here are more of our partners. There's Robinson. Yeah, and this is not an extensive list. We have plenty of partners around the state and beyond. We also want to mention confidentiality. Anyone who works with Terra who provides any TEK or cultural knowledge to us, we do abide by a confidential contract, and we will not be sharing that with any of our grantors or funders. So know that, you know, whatever you share to us, we respect that, and we don't share with others unless you ask us to. Next. And yeah, here's our information. We have social media. Here's our emails and our website, and a lovely photo of all of us. And then do we have questions? Maybe I'll provide like a few so we're behind.
Here's a good one. How open has the government been to incorporating cultural burning and working collaboratively?
Tomash?
Shake your head on that one.
Which government?
Shake your head on that one.
For the feds, like being able to burn on our own lands, the BIA holds that over us. We aren't allowed to have that. A lot of times we're only allowed to burn our tribal fee lands because the state recognizes a lot of us what we do. But according to the BIA, I have to be qualified. I have to have someone who's an RXB2. I have to have all these people who get suppression certifications and qualifications for me to burn on my own land. So as far as for the BIA, it's been a lot of hurdles, and it's a lot. We have a hard time being able to burn on our trust lands. Now for the state on fee lands, it's a lot easier. It's a short process. They let us be able to have people who are training qualified people or qualified trainers who are able to help out on these, and we can pull them from different agencies and put them into our worksheets so that way we can actually get our work done. And for private landowners, it's along with the state. So a lot of our heavy hurdles come from the federal government.
Yeah, the state of California also recognizes cultural fire practitioners, which don't have to have certain NWCG requirements and could burn, without those hurdles. And like Jordan said, the BIA is very restrictive. They're under-resourced and understaffed. They have 4 people for the whole state of California, and those include, the largest number of tribes in the United States. So, yeah.
I just want to add that even though, while it is difficult right now to have that multi-agency or ability to burn, but there are things in progress. Again, I'm from Round Valley, and we are working diligently with the Bureau to be able to mitigate, as well as I believe Big Valley is another tribe that's also working on. We're all trying to work on ways to make it happen. So we're really looking forward to our next burn season being able to start working on our trust lands.
Another question. They told me to come use the mic. Okay, how do non-Native people respectfully carry forward Native ethics of caretaking?
Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
How can non-Native people respectfully carry forward Native ethics of caretaking?
I think that goes into some of our treks. As we do train the community as a whole, community members that will come to our trainings may be privy to some of our TEK, but it doesn't come for an extraction standpoint. It should come from a standpoint of you wanting to take care of the land just as much as we did, seeing the beauty in the land for what it is and wanting to make sure that it is caretaked the correct way, which is along what our First Nations did here. So to be able to do that, if you attend our trainings, or maybe if you have a tribal person who maybe is giving you direction on it, but just honor those things and to see it as, you've been gifted something that is knowledge that usually we carry. But if you have been trusted enough to be able to have that knowledge and implement it, it's because you've been trusted by someone. And so to carry that on, I believe it's a lot of the honor of you.
Yeah, I agree, and I also think that, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, also, if you're approached and you've heard something like, about being respectful to the land, also including the tribes or diverting to a tribal member in any spaces. If you're in an open forum like this and you're like, oh, I heard about TEK or I heard about something, diverting to your local tribes and having them, come aboard, just collaborating with them and including them on every step of the process is the best way to respect, their ethics.
I'd also say, stand with us. We have a lot of issues going on in the world, and we need help. We're small populations, and we try to stand best we can with our voices, but we really need help because we're just trying to protect this land. We're not trying to extract it. We're just trying to protect it, but we need everybody's help. And fire doesn't see any borders, so we're all in this, whether we like it or not. And the best way to work around that is to work together.
I would like to just share that I think it's very important to be empathetic of all of the discussions that we've had about, this is, we keep hearing about this is our cultural practices are things that were taken from us. They were intentionally taken from us in the attempted genocide of our people. And we are very resilient. And so when we talk about our cultural fire, it means a lot to us, but it's not something that's brand new. Another thing to think about is that, a lot of people think of us as the past and our practices as past, but we are here today and still practicing these practices today, and to really, again, be empathetic that this is returning, whether it be returning cultural fire. Each one of us spoke our language today, of many languages, and those are things that we believe as cultural people that need to be done to heal our lands, is to be able to speak the language of the lands. And so when we're asking for these languages to be used and these practices to be used, those are the things that we are returning to our land. It's not the first time that these words have been spoken or these practices have been practiced. So just keeping in mind, it's a return of our culture.
What's the time check right now?
10 after 5.
Okay. So we're going to move on to the questions for the panel. What about Tara's mission drew you into the work, and what keeps you engaged? And I want to go down the line.
Part of Tara's mission was weaving those intertribal collaborations. That really resonated with me because, a lot of us tend to not intermix. But when I attended my first treks and had my first training, I mixed with so many tribal members, and I was related in some way to them. And it really resonated that I had family from all around the lake. And not only that, but they could see what I was seeing in the land, and they wanted to do something about it. So that work keeps me here, and the rapport with my crew is what keeps me engaged, because we're always pushing each other to be better, to learn more about ourselves, to share our cultures with each other. And that's what keeps me here.
I'll say that, I'm not directly involved with Tara. I'm watching Tara. I know a lot of people affiliated with Tara, but I support the work that Tara is doing. I'm going to use a word that when we talk as tribal ceremonial people, we have to use so people understand. We will say cultural practitioner, which means somebody who's grown up in the culture, in ceremony, and the continuum of practices. So as a kid, I grew up in a community where my grandmothers and my aunties continued to burn until the early 2000s. And it was the local fire department who harassed them majority of the time, because at Elim, we didn't seek permits. It was our sovereign right to take care of our lands. And our grandmothers exercised that sovereignty by continuing to burn. And so one of the things that, if you look at, and I know there's a lot of information that's been talked about, but if you look at where we're situated, our villages, they're spread out for those practices to happen. So that way, when we're burning our lands, the main complaint in Clear Lake Oaks was the Keys community. The smoke would go into their community, but traditionally we wouldn't have lived there, because we knew we had to burn that land. And so a lot of times, things are all interconnected that we know as tribal people, and that balance has been interrupted. And so I appreciate and I support the work that Tara does, because it's really a cultural work and a spiritual work. And so when I look at the things that Tara is doing, these are things as a cultural practitioner that you're taught from a little kid and raised up in that knowledge base. And so for the ones that go to universities, cultural practitioners get that training through their elders. And my cousin Robert was sharing some of the history. We come from a lot of those elders who were those traditional leaders. And so one thing that I think needs to be understood when we're talking about tribes today, we're talking about the recognition from the federal government to us as tribes, not our continuum history as tribal people. And so that needs to be understood. And so when we're talking about, you might have seen me when we're talking about permits, I'm here just kind of fuming on the inside, because that's my sovereign right as a tribal person of this land to practice and do all of those things. without permission from, seeking permission from anybody else. That's my exclusive right as a tribal person. But a lot of times, those rights are not recognized, and we end up in court fighting for those rights. Water rights, all of these issues that we deal with, those are inherent rights that have come down to the tribal practitioners and tribal people that our tribal governments are fighting for. So when we look at this big picture and the world that we live in, we have to really understand as individual people, where do our rights lay? And so when I look at Terra and I watch the work that they do, I looked at the picture of the burn. I recognized that as a kid. We did those same burns in our Tule marshes. And those are things that bring life. That picture stirred something in my DNA because I haven't seen that in about 20 years. And because, again, we're taking into consideration the community next to us. And so we've stopped doing that burn. And plus, if you're familiar with Elam, we live next to the Superfund site. And the marsh right there is the most contaminated area in the Clear Lake Oaks Arm. And so we've stopped that burning for 20 plus years, but those are, again, things that are going on that I see with Terra that I support because it's really, like I said, a cultural and a spiritual movement that's happening, and I'm in support of it.
Oh.
Two things that I, recognized when I came to Terra is one, like the active resistance that this organization brings by, bringing back these practices and by having an intertribal hand crew, do the work and, have an all-native board as well. Like, all those things really just caught my attention as, like, this is what resilience and, fight looks like. So I appreciated that when I first came and, recognizes Terra's mission. Another one was, me being a relocated native, my tribe isn't from here, but I grew up in a very intertribal space, and just that connection of, like, we all are from different spaces, but we all have very similar experiences and very similar family dynamics and all those personality traits that just blend well together. So I really appreciated that when I met everybody here at the crew.
So for the past 2 years, I've been working in environmental policy. I work with, outside of Terra, I'm contracted with 4 other indigenous-led tribal nonprofits. And in one of those, I had an internship where we were, studying water policy and going over catastrophic wildfire and how it affected the fisheries. And, being from Round Valley, again, we were part of the complex fire where, I remember, and I grew up with a family of firefighters, so fire is not something that scares me. I'm used to having families out on fire, doing suppression, but when our valley turned black at pitch black dark at 10 o'clock in the morning because of the complex fire, I was afraid. And then learning about, our water policy, how generally our riparian areas can withhold and take so much, and that those fires, just because of the poor land management of all of these checkerboard land spaces that are around my reservation, that our fish and our resources had no chance because of, again, all the poor land management. I started, my internship allowed for me to do boots on the ground work, and I was able to participate in trainings with Terra and became part of the Eco Fire crew, and which led me to my next passion of wanting to work for Terra and, put down good fire. But I was, as a Native woman, I was unaware, of my culture and where I fit in, because we are very, I don't have a problem with being a woman and having my own personal place in our culture and our ceremony, but I wasn't familiar with the fire space as being a Native woman. And so Terra really was able to, I got to share these cultural practices around the lake. I have many connections around the lake, and again, we don't see boundaries, just like the fire doesn't sound boundaries. Thank you, Supervisor Cromwell, because I am always talking about how we were nomadic people, and that was the incorrect terminology. You know, we weren't nomadic people, we were people, place-based people who intentionally lived in different places and shared and bartered with each other to live and to provide sustenance for each other as a whole. And so, you know, that's what really what keeps me at Terra, wanting to work with Terra, is that not only the cultural aspect, but the family aspect. Our crew is definitely family, and, you know, when I'm not around them, I miss them, and, you know, we're just constantly looking out for each other.
Oh. How has Terra supported our local community capacity?
Like I mentioned earlier, we hosted treks. While we do open it primarily for tribal members, we open to the greater community as a whole. And with that, we're able to have both tribal communities and local communities work together. And having that, you know, having that rapport with each other creates a better capacity for you to serve each other in the event of a catastrophic wildfire. You know, you have people who are trained together, who have bonded together. You know, we work with private landowners, so maybe they want fuels reduction for protection for their house, but maybe they have a bunch of medicines there, and we could create that relationship, because fuels reduction is a byproduct of what we would do.
I do want to follow up with a question for everybody. We did have we did discuss a little bit of what cultural burn is. So I'm going to ask you guys, what is cultural fire in your perspective?
You know, I really have to acknowledge fire as being sacred and say it in that manner. And again, we have to look at, again, perspective. Perspective makes us look at things in a certain way. And it's been said up here many times that fire has never been a threat to us. Fire has never been something that we're scared of. Fire is sacred in the sense of it being not only a source of energy, it's a tool. And it's also a part of our ceremonies. And so a lot of times we have to really understand, when we look at our lenses, where we're coming from in that perspective. And so when we come from a perspective of connection and interconnectedness to everything, we'll see the beauty in fire. And probably for a majority of our relatives, non-native relatives, you've been taught fire is something to be feared. You're going to go to hell if you don't live a certain way. And so that perspective was ingrained a long time ago into different cultures. And so when we look through that lens, how do we create a relationship? If our relationship is fear-based, of course we're going to be afraid of fire. There's never been in our history a fire that's devastated this land base as the wildfires that have happened here in the last 10, 15 years. And that continue to happen. And that's because we've been removed from that land base. And so fire was the tool to prevent those catastrophic fires, cultural burns. And so we really have to, again, get familiar and have a relationship, a connection to fire, a sacred connection to fire, to where we understand the gifts that it gives to us as humans. And so when I look at fire and I see it, there's always a reverence for myself. And again, that's the upbringing that I was taught, that I was given by my elders and ancestors. We know as little kids, if something's too hot, we don't touch it. And so again, we start to learn. So at some point, we got to teach again that connection to fire and our interconnected piece to that fire wherever it's at. And so when I see fire, that's my first thought. It's not just a warming, it's a thought of, again, a knowledge of a creation. And so that's how I look at it when we're talking about fire, or we're in any setting. That's the kind of perspective and lens I want to bring. Thank you.
Yeah, when I think about cultural fire, I think about emergence and like birth. You know, when cultural fire is done, it brings about new life and it regrows things, you know, back to their original state. And it also produces like a lot of, you know, good medicine in my tribe. When we, you know, burn something, you know, that ash is even the medicine too. So that's, you know, very important for cultural fire is to have it, you know, regenerate and grow instead of, you know, harming or killing. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I do want to, and maybe or less, Nicole could elaborate on this, but cultural fire brings, you know, it also brings a lot of strength to our local people and our community, meaning that it brings people together, right? You have to go out there to prep it, you have to plan, but you have to do it as a community. And then you have to work together to make sure it's safe. But then after, we have the intergenerational. We have the native foods. You know, then it starts stimulating more questions, more dialogue. And so maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So, you know, I really, again, have to really be so thankful and appreciative of Tara and the ability to, you know, have cultural teaching shared with me, you know, just like Jordan, that feeling of having the ability to, also was able for my very first time, so we have, you know, in a fire, everybody, the organization is separated where I started out on the fire behavior crew and then I worked my way up to being on the firing crew. And, you know, I was so blessed and so excited to hear one day our firing captain, you know, we had a women-led firing crew, and she says, hey, how do you feel about starting this fire? And I was just like so blessed and so honored to be able to put fire down in my relatives' ancestral territories. That felt amazing. And then also, you know, going out to other fires where our elders were there and burning materials, sedges and the acorns, and having those elders teach and share and say, you know, giving gifts to me as a visitor, or even for, you know, sharing in the work of working on the land, gifting our medicines back, it's just a huge blessing and cultural exchange, I guess you can say. But I too recognize, you know, fire as, you know, I see cultural fire as in our ceremony and our connection to the landscapes and all of the other elements.
So I know we're getting closer to time. You know, I'm going to ask this question to the panelists. In conclusion, if you could vision the world in 100 years, what does the world of land stewardship look like? What is the role of tribal people and how agencies, landowners, NGOs, and government entities relate to the land?
So with that one, I'm shooting for the stars. In 100 years, I'd like to see that, you know, all tribes have a representation on their crew for Terra, and that we're no longer asking permission to go on these lands where they are, whether it's state, local, private, federal. We go around the county and we find the areas that need to be treated, and we tell you it's going to be treated, not ask you.
I don't know if I have. I have to lean to our younger people for inspiration and the vision to shoot for the stars. And one of the things I look at, and I'm always constantly reminded of how we got to where we're at. And sometimes I think our answers are in how we got to where we're at, looking at the totality of all of our history together, what's happened to us as indigenous people, what's happened to this land as a part of the solution, understanding that as part of the solution, having dialogue as part of the solution. And for us to have my biggest hope is that we can have not a reconciliation, but a conciliation as human beings to sit down and talk to one another. We hear reconciliation all the time, and what reconciliation doesn't allow indigenous people to do is talk about what happened to us. It's get over it, that happened, this is where we're at. But a part of that is to understand how we got to where we're at. And so we need to tell that story. We need to know your guys' story, where you come from, what your family was like, what your history was like, where you came from. And so that way we come as human beings to meet each other and greet each other because in our history, it was never the opportunity to sit down and get to know each other. The first people that arrived here saw us as inferior, and they're self-superior, and they wanted the resources of this land, so there was no dialogue. There was nothing about how do we live here together, what we're talking about today, what Jordan's talking about, Tomasio is talking about, Robert talked about, how do we exist today as human relatives? And that dialogue doesn't happen. There's usually screaming and shouting, and somebody's being attacked, or somebody's identity is threatened, and we don't even get to understand each other as humans. But far as that being a part of the solution and answer to what does this landscape look like, it's a healthy environment, clean water, clean air, healthy plants, biodiversity, the animal relatives having all of the things they need to survive in a healthy manner. And one of the things I think it's important that gets missed a lot of times is to understand that tribal culture is based in the land. And so the reason why this land was so beautiful is because of the ceremonies that we had here, the ceremonies to regenerate and renew this land. And those are all things that were given to us as our responsibility. And so a lot of times we miss all of that because we're caught up in maybe the scientific aspect of how this all happened, how do we fix things. We miss the story and the solutions and potential answers to how do we reverse what's going on. And so that's where my hope is, that the younger generation will have a big open heart, shoot for the stars, and do the work and learn. Learn the things from both worlds, from the tribal perspective, cultural world, and from the Western education model, because they can mend and blend together. And so we have to be able to do that in a way where us as tribal people don't forget our heritage, our roots, and where we come from, and that knowledge base. So that's my hope. My hope, like I say, is I live on the southeastern shore of Clear Lake. It's probably the worst spot, one of the worst spots on the lake for toxins. But my prayer and my hope and my vision is one day this lake will be clean enough to my generations that come after me to swim in that water again, to eat fish out of that lake again, to harvest tules and be able to eat the tules without worrying about mercury poisoning or methyl mercury or cyanotoxin, all of those things. And it's not just a prayer, it's something that my cousin Robert said earlier today about when we're in ceremony, we're praying and we're dancing and we're sacrificing for all of those things in our ceremonies. And you guys are included in that prayer and sacrifice. And again, it's sometimes it's about change. Sometimes we have to change our perspectives and our knowledge base to gather up some more tools. So that's kind of broad, but I really have a lot of hope for where we're going, and I have to thank people like Tomasio and Jordan and the younger generation, our sisters and aunties and grandmas. They're the ones that led the burning, so it's not by mistake that that's happening again, and so I just want to acknowledge that while I'm up here. Thank you.
Oh.
I guess my vision for the next 100 years is that tribal governments and tribal people will be stronger. And I think that would greatly help in collaboration. When I was working in tribal government, I was, emailed and called a lot to, collaborate, and it's like, oh, I would love to, but, I have 3 people in a whole department, so, it's kind of the last thing on the list. You want to protect, you want to care for and, uplift your people so you can help, others and collaborate with others. So I hope that we can get to a point where our tribal governments are, good and strong, big, and can act on that government to government, stance, and be respected by, the outside agencies. But yeah.
Oh.
I share the sentiments of our panel here of really shooting for the stars and looking for I have a very young. We are very young in my eyes, and I have a very young tribal council at home who are always looking at 7 generations later, or for our kids and our grandkids, and I'm like telling them we are here today, and so we need to think of ourselves and what we can do as well as if we're thinking about the rest. But also, I also agree with, Christina's sentiments, because I've been working in this environmental policy side, and, as we talk today about CEQA and federal and state policy, what I would love to see is that, again, just going back to our languages that we shared, if you can imagine that while all of these policies were made, these policies and treaties were made while rules of interpretation were being violated, whereas we couldn't understand and communicate to understand what was being taken from us from at that time. But as we look at the state of California and we're talking about water rights, and I would like to see the rights of nature be upheld as well, equally as our people, and as well as, looking at when we're talking about CEQA, one thing that I seen that was overlooked was that CEQA also states that, government to government is not simply just the state of California coming and saying, this is what our policy is and we're going to do it. I'm consulting with you tribes now, let's check the box. Our CEQA, our Public Resource Code, says that our federally recognized tribes will also come with their own consultation policy and be able to say, this is what we expect in our policy. So when we can start recognizing and realizing that it is already reciprocal in the state law, then maybe we can make forward progress more quickly. Thank you.
Oh. So in conclusion, I just want to say, with the land, we cannot let go of the land. Our people, it's ingrained and embodied in our DNA. Our people have died here. Our people have continued to be here, and we, there's prayers for a lot of our plants. They're named in the ceremonies. There's songs for them. There's songs for a lot of the areas here that already have names, that have power, and this is life and death for us, really, is protecting this land. We're only found here in the whole world, and we're a small population, even, as nations. We're only found here in the whole world. Our languages are only found here in the whole world, yet we're not valued in our own homeland. We're here to help. But nobody's, we need help. People need to listen. People need to acknowledge us. People need to look us in the eye and let's have dialogue. Let's learn from each other. Let's stand for each other. Let's be that greater community. Let's be that family community. We're here. But again, we need everybody to understand that and to speak and move with your own hearts. Be human. Look at us that way. But yeah, I just want to say no matter how we've been treated, we can't be broken. And we always have spoken for the land, no matter what. And that's just what it is. Our whole philosophy of how our worldview is based off the land. It's not based off humans. It's based off the land. And so that's, again, and that's kind of what I said in the very beginning. I said in the very beginning is it starts with the thinking, right? Thinking and how you look at that land. Do you live with it, or is it a resource? And that that dictates how you treat it. So with that, I think if we have, before we do the questions, I got to do the quiz. So we do have, we'll have a couple minutes for questions, but I wanna know who's kind of been paying attention. Who out there knows water? What the pomo? Oh man.
Whoa, passing.
Let's see. I had some goodie bags, but yeah, we could pass them out. Wait, I didn't hear it. Say it again one more time. I need to hear that. I need to hear that one. Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, what about fire? Right? Now this one's a little bit harder. What about tree? Lay. Wow, thank you guys. Right? We could learn from each other. That's why we're here. And we've always been here to say that. Just nobody's been here to listen. So thank you. Thank you from my heart. So if there's any questions, Q&A here, we could field a couple. I know our panel, our next event's going on. Any other final questions here?
Okay.
We've got one question.
Do you use the buckhorn tree big balls for food source?
We can. We're one of the only peoples that can eat it. Bugs and animals do not eat it. We do. We have a special way of treating it so that we can make it edible.
Any other, one more question. We have one more time for time wise. Yes, sir.
Comment. It seems to me that a component of moving forward your agenda is how we vote at the federal, state, and local levels. Because we have to have people in office, legislators, and others who are open-minded and humane.
Oh, thank you. We could talk offline. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.